Welcome, friends. Hey, thank you for joining us today. So, you probably might now have heard one of my little Facebook Lives talking about the workshops we do on Saturdays. So, we had our first one last week. Lorendi and Nina led it. They facilitated a wonderful workshop on resiliency. And guess what? It worked so well, we're going to do it again. Except it's kind of silly to do the same thing twice. If you want to see it, you get a recording. Just ask. This is like the next level of it. Oh, not like, meaning you don't have to have gone through the first class to benefit from this, but this is resiliency at a deeper level. I'll let Dave, by the way, folks, this is Dave Brisbane. If you haven't seen Dave yet, Dave's my friend, my mentor. He's a father, he's a husband, he's an author. He is also, if you can read below his name, he is the pastor of the Effect Faith Community in San Juan Capistrano. That's how I met Dave. And he's been a friend and mentor of mine for, 17 years of sobriety. I'd say at least 15 years I've known Dave. And he's helped me out more than once. And the cool thing is he helps out a lot of people. I can go on and on about it because I'm a big fan of Dave. I'll let you decide whether you like what he's got. And that's the other thing about what this workshop is. Dave takes care of people one-on-one with counseling. He leads workshops like this. This is an introduction to a 12-week program. You will definitely have some benefit when you join us Saturday. But please know it is, again, don't want to have any smoke and mirrors mislead you and stuff. There is an invitation to be part of a 12-week program that goes really in depth of this. So if you're wondering why are we doing this for free, well, again, we want to help people, but also we want to introduce you into what is available. There is a financial investment. Of course, there's an investment of time. So before you make that decision, we want you to go into it with eyes wide open. Time to breathe. And stuff. So anyway, that's the purpose of this here, is to let you know a little bit more about this Saturday's workshop on resiliency and to see one of the facilitators that will be leading it. Again, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, I introduce you to Dave Brisbane. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Randy. Good morning.
Good morning. Good day. Good afternoon. I know some people will be listening to this, the recording, but yeah. Oh, I've expressed it more than once. I am so grateful that we're getting to collaborate on this project. And also, I'm grateful that you're doing really the heavy lifting. And I guess today's going to demonstrate and stuff. I get to be the host. I'm inviting people to join us and such, but you're really the one that's going to be leading people through this 60-minute workshop. So if you could be kind enough to elaborate a little bit about that workshop and why you're qualified to be a facilitator for it. Could you do that, please?
Absolutely. Well, we're going to be talking about resiliency. I don't know if it really makes a difference which word you use. They're both nouns, so that's good. Typically, when we talk about resilience, we're talking about the ability to bounce back, because that's what resilience means. Kind of like that memory foam, you push it, and you do this, you do that, but it comes back to its original shape. That's resilience. And so we're talking about how do we come back to our original shape once we've been pushed out of shape by life, by circumstances, by people, by whatever it is that happens, and we get bent out of shape. Can we return to our original shape? Our ability to do that has everything to do with our ability to function, of course, in life, our ability to have good relationships. It ties into emotional regulation and just all sorts of issues. Why am I qualified to do this? Well, I've been working in recovery for the past 25 years, both as a pastor and a counselor. I'm a licensed pastoral counselor. I'm also have gotten some training as a chaplain, and been working in the faith community and in treatment centers for all this past 25 years. So talking about resilience in recovery, milieu is, of course, a huge issue. The reason that people are usually using is because they don't have the resilience, the ability to come back after difficulties beset them. So resilience is huge, and it's becoming a buzzword, and everybody's talking about it. Typically when resilience is being taught or discussed, it's kind of topical. It's kind of practical, and dealing with the techniques and the strategies that are involved with becoming more resilient. And there's lots of those that exist out there, and they're all really good. To be able to function better at your job, to be able to function better within your relationships, those are the goals. And so it's kind of cognitive behavioral in that respect, where we're trying to work right now to be able to become more able to deal with the push and pull of life and be able to function and come back to center. What I want to do in this particular series, calling it Beyond Resilience, is to kind of dive deeper down. What is it that's actually happening to us when we're getting bent out of shape? What's actually taking place when we experience these difficulties in life, so that we understand from the inside out and from the bottom up what's going on, so that we can then dial into those areas and not just find ways to cope with the difficulties of life, but find ways to really interiorly transform, so that we are a different person who is addressing the difficulties of life. And so that the resilience kind of becomes the ability not to get bent out of shape in the first place. More of that can take place. I mean, obviously, life is going to hit us in ways that we don't expect and can't anticipate. Traumas are always going to occur, and we need to be able to come back from that. But if more and more we don't sweat the small stuff anymore because we have found a different way to even perceive and address life, that's going to be really important. So to understand what is at the core of resilience is going to be really important. Has this raised any questions in your mind yet, Randy, or should I prattle on?
No. And again, this is not just for me, this is for the listeners.
Sure.
So,
But you're
again,
speaking for the listeners right now.
yeah. So, again, you're kind of eavesdropping like usual with Dave and I when we do these Facebook Lives. But it's kind of a, I don't know, infomercial. Thank you. But yeah, this is much like all the workshops. They are the first module, they're the introduction to a longer series. But because they're so well designed, there is benefit. There is a takeaway at each level. Okay, so in this 12-week program that you wind up pursuing every week to maintain your interest and to have something that is tangible with us. This is not just, I don't know, philosophical, conceptual and such. There's real world stuff involved with this. So this first one, again, is understanding change and loss, and as Dave talked about, hey, this is very, very prevalent in recovery. May even be really the thread that runs through everything in recovery. But, right now, there is no secret. Okay? You don't have to be watching the news that there is a lot of socio-political, cultural change going on. And that's not easy to do. And at any age, but especially people like us that are in our final chapters, we go through life and we have a sense of identity. We have a sense that how things have always been. And I'll speak for myself. I'm not always okay with the way things are changing. Mr. Listener, you may be the same way. Miss Listener, you may say, this is not the way it should be. Well, for me, the difference between how I envision the idealized way, how it is, or how it should be, and how it actually is my level of discomfort. If I'm a million miles away from reality, that's when I'm active in my addiction, because I am so uncomfortable. I can't deal with it. I got to find some kind of coping mechanism from outside of myself and bring it within. But what Dave is sharing is something where you're not going to need external assistance with this. I mean, am I correct in that, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we're always going to need assistance for certain things. But more and more, yeah, we can roll with it. If we start to understand, I mean, why are the difficulties of life difficult? I mean, why are some of the things you're talking about right now, Randy? Why are they difficult? Well, they represent change, obviously, but why is change difficult? I like to tell people really change doesn't hurt. Resistance to change, of course, is excruciating. Now, why do we resist change? For the most part, obviously, some change is welcome, some change is what we're working for. But so much of change is so difficult for us to deal with because it represents loss. That represents a loss of the way things used to be, always have been, that we've grown familiar with, or the way that we think they should be, quote unquote, as you were saying. And that loss is experienced as a loss of identity, even. Who are we within these circumstances that we have become familiar, that we have developed or built ourselves, and now they're all changing on us, whether they're macro out there in the socio-political realm, or whether they're interior in terms of our own change, maybe growing old, our bodies are changing, jobs are coming, we're going into retirement, relationships, empty nest. I mean, all these things represent change that at the same time represent a loss of identity, who we thought ourselves to be, or how we thought things should be. And it throws us into what some philosophers call a limit situation. And a limit situation is a situation in which we reach the limit, first of all, of our ability to control it. We no longer have ability to control the circumstances as they're changing and morphing before our eyes. But we also run to the limit of our ability to make meaning out of it. We had a system of meaning that worked before within the familiar framework, and now it's moved outside of that. We no longer have the ability to make meaning, to understand it, to make sense of it. Life doesn't make sense anymore, and we don't understand our place in it anymore. We run up against the limits of all of that ability to make meaning. And then it puts us into a place of moral distress, which is really the title for what you were talking about there, Randy. Moral distress is occupying the space between the way things are and the way we believe they should be. So that gap is all the space we need to be absolutely miserable, between expectation and experience, the way things are and the way they should be, however you want to look at it. But it puts us in that place of what is typically called moral distress. What it really represents then is a loss of meaning, a loss of purpose, a loss of identity. The roles we played, the accomplishments that we have gained, our personal attributes, they all come into question. And we are literally experiencing grief. We're experiencing the grief of that loss just as acutely as if we experienced a death of a person, loss of a job, or anything else that was really dear to us. We are thrown into grief. And we have to go through the process of grief. Everybody knows the 5 steps of grief, or a lot of them do, but that was not really supposed to describe a neat or linear process. It's just attributes and emotional content and things that we go through as we're trying to do something very specific. We're trying to remake meaning. So resilience is all about remaking meaning after a loss as we're in the grieving process. So that whole process of getting bent out of shape, getting the foam pushed in out of its original shape, that's the loss over which we can reach the limit of our ability to make meaning or to control it. As we move through to the healing process, we're also moving back to our original shape by remaking meaning. But now that meaning that we remake has to accommodate the loss of what that we've experienced. If it were the death of a person, we have to remake meaning without that person in our lives anymore, without that job in our lives anymore, without the kids in the home anymore, whatever it happens to be, with a different person in the White House. How do we remake meaning around that new reality and accommodate that loss? And then remake our meaning, purpose, and identity in a changed landscape. That's what's really going on. And if we understand that process and we understand how central meaning is to that process, then we have more of a map to the journey. We have more traction that we can get, because it's not just hit and miss, a shot in the dark, and trying to, sometimes just live by those cliches, let go and let God. I mean, what does that really mean? But when you understand what you're doing, you can actually take concrete steps toward some of those platitudes or cliches, because they do have meaning, but not if you don't know how to get there. And so we're trying to put some actual practical steps in place once we understand what's really going on deeper down as we experience these losses in life.
Okay. Well, one, it's 15 minutes. And two, I don't think anything more needs to be said to let people know what's in store for them this Saturday. So,
Yeah, we're
again,
gonna get all over this. Obviously, that's just a shot across the bow. But to really dig down into meaning and how we make meaning, and how meaning is often made in retrospect and not in the moment of crisis, and how what part vulnerability plays, how this is spiritual but in a non-religious way. All of these aspects are going to be part and parcel to what we're talking about. And then, of course, as we move on, we do want to get into some of the strategies and the techniques and the tactics and things that we can use to move us through and become more resilient and, as I said, more transformed from the inside out.
yeah, it is an inside job.
Good way to put it.
Speaking of cliches, anybody in recovery hears that more than once. But it is, again, why it's said perpetually and such. Myself wanted everything outside of me to change to meet my comfort level. Again, this is how it should be. If you just did as I told you to do, we'd be all fine. Of course, that's kind of ridiculous, but when I would say it, I meant it. I really, truly needed it. But of course, again, that's not the way things work. So getting into a state where, again, I can be accepting of it, but not being passive about it. And what Dave's describing is such just like, yeah, life, the theme song of the sitcom Friends. No one told you life was going to be this way. Sorry. We do learn by getting into the game, by getting dirty. And I remember there was a talk he talked about how when you were in the football team, no one wants to come off the field with perfectly clean uniform. Well, that's true when you're in the high school football team, but in life, I don't think we really have a choice whether we're going to get dirty. Life is a contact sport. Some guy said that. I don't remember who said it. It probably wasn't the first one I heard do it. But hopefully those who are listening to understand it. It's like, yeah, sometimes life gets pretty rough. We're in the game that is a lot harder than it's played a lot more aggressively than we would prefer. And frankly, it's just there's some ways, again, why the name of Easier Ways Learning Community. It's a little bit easier when we understand, one, that life is not filled with problems per se, but with opportunities to learn. What is to be gained by this adversity that I'm trying really hard to avoid? So resiliency is being able to approach that in a much more acceptable or accepting and open-minded way to get through this. And then as Dave said,
And maybe to use your metaphor there, resilience is about disabusing yourself of the illusion that your uniform is supposed to be clean in the first place, and not trying to spend all that energy keeping it clean. It's supposed to be dirty. It has to be dirty or you're not playing the game. So changing that whole framework is what we're talking about in approaching resiliency from the inside out.
Yeah. So again, that's another thing that I had to learn, and was fortunate enough to have someone like Dave to again, just throw that paradigm to me and then apply it to my life and see what that really meant. But yeah, having a narrative in my head that somehow, some way I could be smart enough, strong enough, successful enough, whatever I could control, I could buy my way out of such, whatever it is to avoid the difficulties in life. I'm sorry. I don't know where I picked up, but I held on to it really, really tightly. Life is hard. Sometimes it's really hard. And of course, it's across society. Some people have it much harder than others. But I do not, in any shape or form, cannot conceive of a human being that hasn't had difficulties in their life, because I think it's kind of how it's designed. This is how we grow. Again, like if we're going to frame them up as life lessons, this is how we grow. We evolve into the next stage of ourselves, the next version. You look back at yourself when you were younger. the things that you thought about most and what was really important to you, you know, like wearing the right clothes when you showed up for school that day, you know, to have friends that were cool kids and stuff probably now seems kind of silly. Well, because you matured. You know, you went on with life. And if empty nesting is some stuff, yeah, the concerns of how do I keep my kid alive long enough for him to go out and make his own family. Okay. Now that you're a grandparent, you can enjoy your relationship with your kids and your grandkids at a different level. You know, your kid's got some skill set. He'll probably be okay no matter what they do or don't do. So I know I'm kind of riffing and stuff, but folks, if you're listening to this, yeah, we're going to be very pragmatic about this and stuff, but there will be some stuff that will make you kind of go, Is that right, Dave?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It should make you go,
Yeah. So again, I hope that again you can join us. If for some reason your schedule doesn't allow you to be live on Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Pacific time, and it'll be done virtually. It won't be in Facebook. We're going to do this outside of Facebook because it just, well, for various reasons, it just works better. But you're invited to join us. If for some reason you cannot make that, that's okay. We will have a recording. But the difference is, well, you'll see if you show up, there'll be interaction with people. And that's what makes it a little bit better because you're part of creating the workshop. It's there. Dave's a facilitator. Lorendi's a facilitator. We're all learning this together. So that all being said, I hope to see you on Saturday. Dave, again, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to do this little thing. And thank you so much for your time, investing your time in Saturday. We greatly appreciate it.
Great talking, Randy.
Okay.